He may not know it, but my son is in extreme mortal danger. With every passing minute, the odds dwindle that I will ever see him alive again. I should have been a better parent. I had too much faith in him. We haven't always been close, and we used to fight a lot. I know he secretly resents me for divorcing his addict mother. On the rare occasion when she actually shows up to her weekly visits to see him, he tells me to leave and listens intently to her mad ramblings, as if just to spite me. Despite how many times I've told him that I only do things for him because I love him and I want what's best for him, he refuses to consider me as anything more than a roommate who pays for his expenses. He has a short temper and is very rebellious despite his age. This brings me to our latest problem, one that could prove fatal for him. You probably all know about time control by now, but for those of you who haven't kept up to date with current events, I'll describe the recent past through my point of view. As you remember, it was just 1 year ago when the research company Hastel announced its revolutionary breakthrough of time manipulation. I remember laughing at that headline, thinking it was some ridiculous hoax that some unfortunate news reporter had happened to fall for. But as I saw the footage of the world's first time traveler in action, I realized the world would never be the same again. At that point, time machines were too large for practical use. A machine larger than a house was needed to slow down time for a small lab mouse for less than 5 minutes. Still, the world watched in awe as the mouse moved at supersonic speeds through a series of mazes. Though many had initially believed that the creature had gained some sort of supernatural ability, the scientists in charge of the public experiment promptly explained that the mouse was not actually moving faster than normal, but that because of the machine towering above it, time had become slower within the maze. What had seemed like minutes to us was actually almost an hour to the mouse. Scientific communities from across the globe celebrated this historic breakthrough, but Hastel was preparing for a more lucrative future. Despite the limitations of the early models, I suspected from the start that it wouldn't be long before Hastel had developed a sleeker and more marketable version of the device for public use. 2 months after the initial breakthrough, commercials bombarded the world about the new Time Pack. The machine that had once filled several Lincoln research rooms and weighed almost a ton could now fit in a large backpack that almost anyone could carry. Instead of minutes, people could freeze the whole world around them for hours at a time. Despite a price tag so high that only the most wealthy people could afford one, the Time Pack was a huge commercial success. People began completing projects in hours that would typically take days to finish. Fewer people complained about sleep deprivation and time-constrained work schedules. Many people even abandoned their cars, opting to walk everywhere they went, as time had become virtually irrelevant to them. As sales increased, newer, lighter, and cheaper versions of the Time Pack were developed. It wasn't long before millions of units had been sold. With Time Packs, everyone seemed happier. They finally had all the time they could ever want. However, as it often accompanies great technology, vile minds and evil hands had turned the technology to favor their dark agendas. Police officers were promptly equipped with time packs as thieves and serial killers began committing their crimes at speeds that made them virtually invisible to the human eye. Drug lords could create and distribute their substances in the blink of an eye. Forensic scientists became overwhelmed as they were presented with more and more criminal evidence that dated back centuries. As things got worse, Hastel realized the dangerous power of its devices and began requiring license and backgrounds checked for its customers. But it was too late. More stories flooded in about high-ranking officials being assassinated by ordinary, disgruntled people. There were even rumors that in less developed countries, people are forced to use time packs to contribute an entire lifetime's work in a matter of days, leaving entire villages destitute save for an incredible number of elderly people. The greatest blow to Hastel's reputation didn't become public until recently, however. You all have likely probably heard of Randy Hill. He was a 9-year-old boy who received a time pack as a birthday gift. By nightfall, Randy had vanished. Over the following few days, the worried parents reported 3 break-ins, 1 by a teenager and 2 more by adult men. By the 3rd day, Randy's body was found lying on his bed in advanced stages of decomposition. Forensic evidence suggested that not only was the body over 100 years old, but that young Randy had died from old age. He had lived his entire life in just 3 days. His body would have been nothing but dust if the batteries in his time pack didn't run dry. But you all have likely heard of most of these stories. What you didn't know is that last week my son got a time pack of his own. He got it from his mother during one of the few visits that she allowed. Drunk had lost all sense of responsibility for our son, and it showed when she used her inheritance to buy my son a brand new time pack, with no thought as to his well-being. He is, or at least he was, 11 years old, so I didn't confiscate it from him, but I made him promise me that he would treat it with the same kind of respect and restraint that he would show a firearm, and as long as he promised to use it only to do homework. Unfortunately, but expectedly, over the past few days I've seen him less and less. He would often startle me by walking into one room only to walk out a completely different one moments later. I knew he was having fun, but I feared that he might have been using his new toy a little too much. My fear was confirmed yesterday. I remember that morning clearly, because as I reached the kitchen to prepare breakfast, I saw my son making pancakes. The first thing I noticed was how different he looked. Have you ever reunited with someone that you haven't seen in a long time, that it takes you a while to recognize them? That's how I felt when I saw him. He still looked like a kid, just a bit older. And I also realized I had never taught him how to make pancakes. I sat him down and talked with him about what he had been up to the night before. Straining to remember, he recounted that he had gone to bed and he had forgotten to turn off his time pack. When he woke up fully rested, he realized that it was still night and only a few seconds had gone by. He wasn't tired anymore and figured he would spend the rest of the night reading his books. As he reached for the off switch in his time pack, he realized that if he just kept it on, he could read an entire library of books and just do about anything else he wanted to in just one night. He then told me about how he spent days switching between reading, watching cartoons, eating, and sleeping. After a while, he got bored of the routine in the darkness of the night and finally turned off the time pack. The pancakes he had made that morning he had actually learned from a cookbook and had perfected as they had been his snack of choice the night before. I realized then it had gone too far. I didn't care about how much he enjoyed stopping time. He had to put an end to his bad habit or risk losing some of the most precious years of his life. I sternly told him he had to stop, and I demanded the time pack. However, he refused, and after a short but heated argument, he turned it on and disappeared. That was yesterday. I haven't seen or heard from him since that argument, and I fear he hasn't turned off his time pack in all that time. I now realize what a terrible mistake I've made. I never taught my son about discipline, self-control, self-dependence, or the importance of getting an education. I don't know where he is or how much time has passed for him, but I do think he'll come to his senses eventually. But time is running out. Will he be a 50-year-old man before I see him again? Can't believe I'm saying this, but I wish he had just decided to run away months ago before he ever got his time pack. At least then he would have his whole life ahead of him. If there's anything you know that can help, please let me know. I read online about a rehab program for people who are addicted to time control, but I think it's too late for that. Call me as soon as possible with any ideas. I can't think of anything else I can really do. What makes me most nervous, though, is that it's an exceptionally beautiful day outside, and I can imagine someone spending all of eternity out there.